now for Mr. Hughes' surprise. As the enormous craft approaches her 95-mile-an-hour takeoff speed, the pilot lifts her onto the step and holds her there as she races through the choppy sea. And with the final drive of her engines, 200 tons are airborne. 5 months ahead of time. 70 feet off the water, she stays for a mile. $23 million worth of airplane has answered a lot of committee questions. It can fly.
Howard, did you expect that? Yes, certainly. I like to make surprises. You were surprised or not? Oh, I said I thought I'd make a surprise.
So in this episode, we're going to answer the following questions. Number one, how did the Spruce Goose end up in small-town rural Oregon? And what are the 2 best hotels in Central Oregon? Which 2 McMinnville restaurants made the top 50 list in the U.S.? And where can you find world-class Pinot Noirs? But first, let's talk about Del Smith, the founder of Evergreen Aviation. His life epitomized the classic American dream, rags to riches. He was born February 25th, 1930. His parents were involved in a deadly train car accident which took his father's life, and his mother died a short time later while giving birth to Del. He was placed in an orphanage and adopted by Emery and Mabel Smith at the age of 20 months. He was raised in poverty during the Great Depression and World War II. His mother worked in a candy factory and cleaned houses. Del delivered newspapers and sold coal he found along railroad tracks.
Deal with the hand we were dealt. In retrospect, being disadvantaged can lead to being advantaged.
He took flying lessons for money he saved, and he served in the 82nd Airborne Division during the Korean War. He learned to fly helicopters in 1955, working for Dean Johnson in McMinnville, Oregon. Then in 1960, he started his own company, Evergreen Helicopters, with a single Hiller UH-12 helicopter. This was the first of 7 interrelated companies, eventually becoming one of the largest air freight companies in the world. So how did the Spruce Goose end up in small rural town Oregon? The Spruce Goose was initially the idea of Henry J. Kaiser, a leading Liberty shipbuilder during World War II. At the beginning of the war, German U-boats were sinking Allied freighters faster than they could be replaced. At the time, it was taking about 244 days to build a single ship. The Liberty ship, however, took only 39 days, producing about 200 ships per year. Kaiser approached Hughes with an air cargo ship idea, which Hughes immediately gravitated to. They went through 7 designs before eventually landing on the current design. The government initially contracted for 3 airplanes with $18 million budget. Hughes was to supply $7 million of his own money. Construction did not begin until 16 months after the signing of the contract. Hughes was restricted to use no critical materials, no aluminum. In place, they used Duramold, which was developed as a laminate of birch, light enough and strong enough to withstand the forces of a large airplane. Kaiser withdrew about this time, blaming Hughes for his perfectionism. A new contract was then signed that went from the HK-1 to the H-4 Hercules. The plane was not completed until 2 years after the war ended. Hughes was brought before a Senate committee, War Investigating Committee. Hughes was accused of bribing government officials, the Roosevelt's grandson. Hughes counterattacked Senator Brewster, who was in bed with the Pan Am Airways and who wanted a monopoly on international flights.
So I ask you this question again, Senator Brewster. During my last trip to Washington, and while we were having lunch in your suite at the Mayflower Hotel, did you or did you not offer to call off this entire investigation if I would agree to merge TWA, Trans World Airline, with your friend Juan Tripp's Pan American Airways?
Hughes won the bet. During the hearings, Hughes broke away for the most incredible stunt. He pulled the airplane out for some taxi runs and got the Goose airborne. This also did a lot to quiet his detractors. There was speculation as to whether the flight was intentional. The keeper of many of those secrets while Hughes was alive was Jack Rial, a brilliant aeronautical engineer who worked on all the famous planes built by Lockheed during his 33 career with Lockheed, including the SR-71. Actually, says Rial, Hughes told him that the flight was accidental. Howard said, "I don't know what I told the press after the flight, but I'll tell you. I had the poor man's high-lift device." Rial recalled he had a 17-foot diameter propeller. Takeoff was 2,700 RPMs. He was on the step, and he finds out that while the aircraft's stall speed was probably around 70 miles per hour, he had an effective speed of maybe 90 miles per hour. The reason being the high-velocity wind over the wing from the 8 engines and their propellers. Then he also said, "You don't think I was going to fly on a first flight with 34 people. I was going to do it with just 3 people. I put a little flaps on just to see if it could lift itself. Pretty soon I was in the air because of the high-lift device," Rial said. There were 8 men standing in the wings, 1 behind each engine and 1 riding in the tail. In addition, there were members of the press and several guests on board. None was belted in at the time of takeoff. That was to be the first and only time the Spruce Goose would ever fly. For the next 33 years, it rested in a specially built, climate-controlled building under lock and key at an annual cost of $1 million. It wasn't until after Hughes died in 1976 that Hughes Holdings, the Sumo Corporation, released ownership to the Aero Club of California. From there, it was placed in a dome structure for display on Long Beach Harbor next to the Queen Mary floating hotel. Owned for a brief period by the Disney Corporation, which later pulled out, a search was then made to find a new home. A young F-15 pilot, Michael King Smith, son of Del Smith, wrote the winning proposition, and the aircraft was sold to Evergreen Aviation. In August 1992, the Spruce Goose was disassembled into 4 main sections and loaded onto a seagoing barge and then floated close to 1,000 miles up the Pacific West Coast to Portland, Oregon. From there, it was transferred to smaller barges and floated up the Willamette River to Dayton, Oregon. The final few miles were made on trucks, arriving 7 months later in February 1993. After 8 years of painstaking restoration, the Spruce Goose was completed for the museum's opening on June 6, 2001. It was Del Smith's son, Captain Michael King Smith's dream to build an aerospace museum and to acquire the Hughes H-4 Hercules. Tragically and very ironically, this F-15 pilot was killed in an automobile accident in Tennessee in March 1995 and never got to see his dream fulfilled. McMinnville Airport is a public-use municipal airport located in the Willamette Valley about 45 miles southwest of Portland, Oregon. It's a 6-minute drive into town, and the airport is located across the highway from Evergreen Museum. It is walkable to the museum, but just a little bit dangerous because of the highway. Uber is hit and miss. I would call your hotel and ask for assistance with a ride before you arrive. Rental cars are also available, and they have a courtesy call available at the FBO for rent for about $40 a day. There are 2 intersecting runways, 0422 and 1735. 22 is the preferred runway. It is 5,420 feet long by 100 feet. It is in excellent condition. 1735 is 4,340 feet by 75 feet and is in good condition. They have ILS and RNAV approaches. The FBO Potcake Aviation is small but very efficient. They have self-service, 100 low lead, and Jet A. There are no landing fees for single-engine pistons, and parking is about $10 a night. They do have a courtesy car available for rent. The biggest thing to know is that there are both fixed-wing and helicopter training operations at this airport, and it can be very busy. Often I'll see 3 to 5 aircraft in the pattern, and it can be very difficult to work your way in.
Traffic, Archer 80 Kilo is 3 miles to the south of BORD Bravo with circle land 22 McMinnville. McMinnville traffic, mall 5659 Papa is going on a missed approach. To the north.
And McMinnville traffic, Bonanza 7226 kilos on short final for 22 landing.
McMinnville traffic, Cessna 90558, 3 mile north, 2700 descending, looking for high power traffic. West of correction, McMinnville.
And micro traffic 95659 Papa at 1400 climbing on the missed approach, looking for the traffic. We can maintain the west for now for separation.
Thank you, sir. We are maintaining 2000 to fly over the field, McMinnville.
And Roger, looking for you.
I got your insight. We are maintaining 2000.
McMinnville traffic, departure 88 kilo left down 122 McMinnville. McMinnville traffic, helicopter 55 taking off Alpha 22 taxiway, right traffic, McMinnville.
McMinnville traffic, Bonanza 7226 kilos off of 22 Alpha 2 for the FBO, clear of the runway.
Some soft-boiled eggs there. This one is a completely quiche and a morning salad, some lacto cauliflower, and then topped in a hazelnut dairy dressing. Some fun flowers in there from our farm. Then we have the pan au chocolat and then a twice-baked brioche roast-off with a pistachio quince. This one is just a pasteurized bacon and a country salami. And then the cheeses are calypso on the bottom and a blue cheese on the top. This is a fun European-inspired bean ragu, some foraged Oregon morel mushrooms, some flowers in there.
So pretty.
And then we have
You're supposed to eat it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a favorite, so I would be sad if you didn't get to try it. I think you'll really love it. Fresh bowl of Supreme grapefruit oranges. Have this lemon curd, homemade butter. And the only thing on the table that doesn't come from us is this jam. It comes from Alchemist Jam right across the street from the Valley Station. They have phenomenal jam. This one is a boysenberry flavor. They are with a matcha granola. Super fun as a cereal type, a splash in a coffee, or separate is great. Really no wrong way to eat granola. And this naturally leavened bread from our wood fire stove. We have the sourdough in the front. That's the one you eat at dinner. And then Pullman in the back. And you ate in a
Well, Senator, you know very well I not only didn't make anything, I have lost $7,200,000 to date. I put the sweat of my life into this thing. I have my reputation rolled up in it. And I have stated several times that if it's a failure, I'll probably leave this country and never come back, and I mean it.
Hughes disappeared from the public eye soon after the Senate hearings. His last public appearance was in 1952 when a Hughes aircraft helicopter was unveiled. After that, he surrounded himself with yes men. He had become addicted to narcotics by that time, ever since his near-fatal plane crash in the XF-11 in Beverly Hills.
Howard Hughes, famous flyer and sportsman, was dragged out of this wreckage of an experimental plane he was testing. He was seriously injured. After ripping the corner from two homes in Beverly Hills, California, the plane finally plunged into this house. The force of the impact virtually wrecked the building and caused the plane to catch fire. The flyer said that the accident was due to motor failure shortly after his takeoff.
Critically, Hughes suffered from severe OCD, narcotic abuse, and paranoia. He moved to Las Vegas to avoid paying taxes, and although he was the wealthiest man in the world, did not pay any personal income tax for about 7 years. He was protected from the outside world from his inner circle of a few LDS men and was moved around from the Bahamas to Canada to Mexico to avoid a number of civil lawsuits. Howard Hughes died on a flight from Mexico to Houston. He basically died from neglect. He was emaciated, drug addicted, x-rays showed broken needles in his arm, and ultimately from kidney failure.
April the 5th, 1976. Howard Hughes is taking his last flight. He will die in the air before the plane touches down in Houston. His codeine addiction, along with severe dehydration and malnutrition, had finally pushed him over the edge. According to the autopsy, he died of kidney failure. But many people feel that Hughes died from a disease called neglect.
And I start reading about the autopsy, the condition in which they found him, with broken hypodermic needles in his arms. And my wife ran up to me and she said, "Honey, what's wrong? You're crying." Yes, I was crying.
All his life, Howard Hughes craved recognition from the world, even whilst he hid away from it. He wanted to be a legend, revered for his pioneering feats of aviation, for his aircraft designs, his business vision, and his movies. Instead, he will probably be remembered for quite different things. His bizarre exploitation of women, his strange paranoid personality, the abuse of his enormous power, his years as a recluse, and above all, for the way he corrupted the American dream.